everyone, I just wanted to give you guys a quick tutorial on our 3 measures of central tendency that we discussed in this course. So our first is the mode, which is probably the simplest to understand. It's just the most frequently occurring score. So let's say that I have a variable of interest. Maybe it's intelligence, maybe it's creativity, maybe it's anxiety. I would go out and I would collect data on this variable. So I would have some participants and I would give them an inventory and score that inventory. And so each participant would have a score on this variable. So it would have a score of, let's say, anxiety. So for my kind of hypothetical data set, let's say that I have one participant who scored an 8, right? Then another who had a score of 5, I had a 7, a 9, an 8, a 6, an 8, and a 10. Right? So as you can see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 scores. Right? So 8 participants who took my anxiety inventory. So 8 scores in my data set for this variable. If I wanted to determine the mode, I just look to see which is the most frequently occurring score. So that would, of course, be 8, and in fact, it's the only one that occurs multiple times. So I have 3 scores of 8, so that would be my mode. Okay? The median is the middlemost score. Right? So to determine the median, I first need to arrange my scores hierarchically. Right? So I need to take my scores and arrange them from lowest to highest. So my lowest score numerically is 5. Then I have 6, 7, I have 3 8s as we determined earlier. Then I have a 9 and a 10. Right? So I've taken all of my scores here and arranged them from lowest to highest. I then need to determine what is the middlemost position of my scores arranged from lowest to highest, right? So where is the middle? So we already determined that I have 8 total scores, right? 8 people who took my anxiety inventory. I'm going to add 1 to that, which will give us 9. I divide 9 by 2, right? So I take this and divide it in half. Divide 9 by 2, and that gives us a middle position of 4.5. Now, 4.5 is not my median. 4.5 is the position of my median. So I need to go back to my set of scores to determine where is 4.5. Right? So I look at 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4.5 would be halfway between 8 and 8. So halfway between 8 and 8 is, of course, 8. So my median is 8. All right, so let's do one more of these just because this can be a little confusing. So let's say I have another series of numbers. I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right, now I look to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 scores, so I add 1 to that, which will give me 10. Divided by 2, which will equal 5. So that's the position of my median. So where is the 5th position? We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th position is a 7. So my median for this series of numbers is 7. Right? So the mean is just the average of all the scores. This is probably one of the most popular measures of central tendency. Let's go back to our original series of numbers. We'll take this one that's arranged in order, but it doesn't matter if it's arranged highest to lowest or just randomly, because all we're doing is we're taking all of our scores and we're adding them together. So 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. Right, so if we add all of our scores together, we should get a sum score or a total score of 61. I then divide that number by the number of scores that I have. Right? So we already determined that we had 8 scores total. So I take my 61, divided by 8, which should give me, we rounded 2 decimal places, a mean or average score of 7.63. Now, there's something very interesting about the mean. Right? If you notice here, our mean score, it doesn't equal any of the actual observed scores. So no one here that we measured on anxiety had an anxiety score of 7.63. Right? So our mean in some cases is overestimating the score, right, as we see here. And in some instances, it's underestimating our participant score, as we see here, right? Just like for the exam, if I took the average exam grade, it may be the case that no one actually scores exactly that average, and some people will score higher and some people will score lower. So what makes the mean such a great measure of central tendency? We see why it's a good measure of central tendency when we look at what's called deviation scores, right? So we can see to what extent each person deviates from the mean. Right? So if we take our person who had an anxiety score of 5, we subtract the mean of 7.63, right? We would see that this particular person, 5 minus 7.63, has a deviation score of negative 2.63. So for each person, for each score, we can calculate a deviation score. Right? How much does that actual observed score deviate from the mean? So 6 minus 7.63 gives us a deviation of 1.63. 7 minus 7.63 should give us a deviation score of negative 0.63. Our 8 minus 7.63 should give us a deviation score of 0.37, and we know that we have 3 scores of 8, so we'll do this 3 times, each time getting a deviation score of 0.37 equals. So, okay, we saw here that we have scores that are deviating negatively. And here we have positive deviation scores. We're going to expect, right, that our higher scores are also going to be positive deviation scores. So some scores are lower than the mean, some scores are higher than the mean. We take 9 minus 7.63, we'll get a deviation score of 1.37. And then finally we have our last score, 10 minus 7.63. 10 minus 7.63 should give us a deviation score of positive 2.37. All right, so we have our series of deviation scores that we've calculated. What we can then do is take all of these deviation scores and add them together. So negative 2.63 plus negative 1.63 plus 0.37, plus negative 0.63, we want to make sure that we get all of them, plus 0.37, plus 0.37, plus 0.37, plus 1.37, and finally plus 2.37. So if I add all of these together, what I should get within rounding error, because we rounded these to 2 decimal places, but within rounding error, I should get a sum deviation score of 0. Right? And so what that means is that this mean of 7.63 is balancing the amount that we're underestimating scores to the amount that we're overestimating scores. Right? So that's what we mean by the fact that the mean is that balance point. Right? And we'll talk a lot more about deviation scores and the importance of deviation scores in later chapters. So this is an important thing to kind of understand conceptually what's meant by a deviation score and how we might be able to use those deviation scores to tell us something about central tendency, right? Or its relation to the mean or the average score. All right, so I'll also post a very brief video for how you can determine measures of central tendency, mode, median, and mean when you have a frequency table as opposed to the raw scores as we have here.